Okay, just waiting for confirmation that the stream is going live. There we go. I think that we are now live on both Twitch and YouTube. So welcome back to the Island 54 development stream, where I'm building a survival crafting MMO in Unity 3D and TypeScript for the backend. In my last stream, I was working on getting commands being sent from the client to the server so that we can do things like pick up and drop inventory and then ultimately harvest things like trees. This is all part of my current short-term, well, medium-term plan to get the game play tested using the scenario where someone goes into an area, clears out some mobs, harvests some resources, and then fends off the odd mob that comes back in. Just going to check that everything is looking good. It does appear to be excellent. So I haven't done any work since my last stream. I did a little bit of looking into how the async keyword works within Unity, but other than that, it's I'm going to be starting the stream off with me trying to work out what I was actually working on. I don't think I even have Rider running at the moment, so let's get that up. So just by way of recap, to keep me across it, a couple of the decisions that we made in the last stream was rather than having a separate request and response object, the server would set a status field on the command itself. That can either be, from the client's point of view, that status can be initial, act, success, or failure. Now, I probably need to think about that. Just looking at that, that doesn't quite seem wrong because I think that doesn't quite seem right because in the last stream, I pointed out that there's no need to tell the server whether or not we're in the initial or the act state. So there is going to have to be a result come back from the server, but perhaps that just won't be exposed in here and that will instead just update this. I'll get to that and see how we go. So we have an ID that is set by the client so that the client can just keep track of which commands it has sent and which ones have been act or whatever. That allows them to be undone if something fails. We have a verb, which is going to be for now just pick up or drop, but later on could be harvest. We have a from reference, which is, in the case of pickup, going to be the entity ID of the entity we're picking up. To will be a slot, and then quantity will be how much of the thing we want to pick up. Or if it's not specified, either it's not relevant to the command, or maybe it's just not, maybe we just want to use a default, like pick up the whole thing. And then finally, we have status, which allows us to keep track of whether or not the server has acknowledged our command or whether or not the command succeeded or failed. In the event it succeeds, we will just delete this component because there's nothing more for the client to do. Or in the case that it fails, we will ideally need to be able to undo whatever changes were made locally as part of this command. If I recall correctly, I was able to test this as well. So we could see these commands getting added to our local player entity. But what I haven't done is changed it so that these commands get sent off to the server. So I think that is the next thing I'm going to be working on. So it looks like I did start writing this code. So on each frame, we look for... hello, SSB2. Sorry, I had my comments turned off. Yes, I'm making a massively multiplayer game. The client is being built in C# and Unity, and the backend is being built in TypeScript, and is already quite scalable, but is being designed so that it can become arbitrarily scalable. So this could conceivably support many players. The game itself is a survival crafting game. Okay. So I am still just reminding myself where I was up to last time I was streaming. We can see in here that we look up on each frame, we look up cases where we might have to send a command through to the server. Now, this isn't quite right in here, running this in update, because the client might be doing 60, 100, 120 frames a second, whereas we don't want to send these updates to the server on every frame. We only want to be sending them about 10 times a second. That's something that I'll change later though. So all we do in here is we say, hey, if the status is initial, then we need to create, what are we creating here? A component update. So this is telling the server about the new component. We're adding the ID in, we're adding the verb, we're adding the from and the to. It looks like I've got a fair way through all of this. And then we specify the quantity. Now, it needs to do this, it needs to keep on sending this until we've seen the result come back from until we've seen an acknowledgement come back from the server, because we have no idea if these packets are going to make it through or not. It's the nature of UDP. We add the player update. Are we adding this component update onto the entity? I don't think we are yet. We only want to get components on the player item. Player dot yeah, so don't worry too much, SSB, if you don't have a huge amount of software experience. Feel free to ask questions as I go. Player dot, I'm trying to work out how to get the actual game object from my player. Oh, player is a class here. So actually, I want to get the instance of the player dot game object. There we go. Now I can ask for its components. That's better. So this will find any of these remote command request components that we've added to our player. We send them here. And then this component update, the way that I have structured this is we need to add this to the player update. So the player update needs to have one of these updates added to itself. Add component update. So the client should now be able to send packets to the server that include commands. So I'll quickly do a test of this. I'll need to spin up Unity first. Just start that now. Waiting. I was meaning to update Unity over the weekend. I'm not going to do that on stream because that's when things tend to break. I need to start my service. Now I'm going to do it with the packet, the network receiver ready to be debugged because I want to be able to see these packets actually coming in. Thank you, SSB2. Appreciate it. I find that the streaming, and I also do a kind of an update, more edited update episode every 2 weeks on YouTube. And I find that they really help keep me motivated on this project. So I'll refer to you as tacos then. Okay, my server is started up. I'll then start the client, and we should see a bunch of trees and stones and things around. There's a graphical glitch that causes them all to lie down for a moment, but that's okay, and everything's also hovering above the ground. Now, I should be able to pick up this stone, which I've now picked up, and what I'm expecting is for the client to just keep on telling the server over and over again that it needs to pick that stone up into my inventory, because I haven't made any changes to the server yet, so it will never be acknowledging, I don't think it'll ever be acknowledging that it's received that information. So, where is that going to happen? It's somewhere in the UDP receiver. What's this doing? Yeah, good old think. I think I can find this faster myself. UDP receiver, source, listener. We'll look at the datagram processor. So this is the bit that pulls apart the packets. And somewhere in here, it should actually decode the message. Here it is. So just after it's decoded the message, I'm expecting that to be hitting that breakpoint. Oh, something is crashing. Here we go. So I need to work out why this is crashing. It's a timeout. Oh, we've got errors all over the place. UDP transmitter is crashing. What about the UDP receiver? Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to start the server again and hopefully see an early error message that might indicate what's going wrong. Okay, something did crash early. Okay, let me try that again. Right, without the breakpoint. I have a problem where sometimes if I hit a breakpoint too early, my connection to my server dies. I don't know what causes it. It's on my list of things to look up. Okay, so here we go. Let's just stop the server and see what is in the logs. It comes down. Sorry, you probably can't see this very well. I'll just move things around. I'll move my ugly face around. There we go. I'm not familiar with playgrounds. My kids have they do a lot of kind of the online coding courses. I can't remember what they're called. Things like, I can't remember what any of them are called, just off the top of my head. But there are heaps of good sites for learning to code. And my advice for learning to code would be don't worry about which language you're learning in. If you focus more on finding good courses in how to learn coding, you're going to learn a lot more than if you say, oh, I want to learn C# and try to learn that, because there's just too much to learn all at once. So you're better off using one of the systems that are designed for learning. Okay. So in here, the whole thing is starting up. It all looks, this is all normal. It's the normal stuff that it says as it comes up. And then, here we go. I know exactly what is going on here. The problem is it's trying to create the component so it's trying to save our new component that I'm trying to create in the database, but the database just doesn't use the same format as the client. This is actually going to be a little bit tricky. And the reason it's going to be tricky is the client needs to tell the server to create a component, but it's going to send potentially lots of these packets before it knows to stop sending them. And then the server needs to go and put that component into its database. And then it's going to come up with its own ID from that. So if it receives lots of create requests, it's going to end up creating lots and lots and lots of copies of the data, which is not good. So what I need to do is I need to stop those copies from getting into the database. The easiest way to do that is going to be, here's the code that manages the database. I'll fix it for components for now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to store an extra field in here and tell the database that this has to be unique. Let me think. Now I'm going to call it an idempedence key. The name doesn't really matter. This is just a idempedence is a mathematical concept that running a function or doing something multiple times is the same as running it once. So if I create lots of these, we're going to end up with exactly one of them. Let's see. So I'm going to have an idempedence key. This is going to be of type string. mongoose.schema.types.string. And I'm also going to have it being unique. I think we have to be indexed. That's probably automatic once we're telling it to be unique. Now what this will do is if I set this as I'm putting something into the database to a value that I know I can reproduce, then we'll only ever get one of these, or we'll get an error, in which case we know that we've already created it. So next thing I need to do is when we go to save one of these in the database, that's I believe in here, promises. This is where it goes through each of the component requests. And then I've got to decide how I'm going to manage this. I think I'm going to send them through as a create request. But I first need to make sure that the component doesn't already exist. So entity.find1. So we're going to try and find an entity in the database having components idempedence key. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Const, here we go. Idempedence key. Now, this needs to be made up of something about the client that we know. So we do have this thing called a session ID. Where does that get sent through? I'm going to have to pass that through at the start. Session ID. And then I'm going to put a colon. And then my creation request should probably have a special field, which is their own idempedence key. So we get our item. These need to be in braces. There we go. Idempedence key. Item is not valid. Why not? Oh, that's defined up there. I actually want component update. Now we don't yet have an idempedence key. So I'm going to have to add that to the protocol. What am I going to add to the game? I'm not sure I understand, Tacos. In today's stream, do you mean? Today, so today it's not going to look all that exciting, but my goal is to have it so that when you pick up a stone from the world, not only does it appear in your inventory and disappear from the ground, but it'll also disappear for any other players who are connected to the same server. So at the moment that doesn't happen. The rock actually stays on the ground when another player picks something up. Only they see it being disappearing from the ground. Welcome back, Griffith. Good to see you again. Oh, this is me trying to capture thumbnails and things. So let's see, I need to get into projects, Island 54, that, yarn, add, protoc. I'm just going to rebuild my protocol. Not yarn add protoc. Oh, don't do that. Services, there we go. Build the protocols, copy them over to the client. So at the moment, Graphic, I'm currently working on getting uh, on fixing a not so well thought out part of my protocol. When a create request is sent, I need a way of making sure that it doesn't create multiple items. So I'm adding this concept of an idempedence key to try and stop the to try and stop it from creating multiple instances. Equal to idempedence key. I can't do an await in here, can I? That's annoying. I'll just have to do it as a promise. I can't remember how to do this. It's been so long since I've done normal promises in JavaScript. Yeah, you'll get the hang of it, SSB2. It does take a lot of practice. If I recall correctly, Graphic has been working with software for over 10 years, and I myself have been doing it for over 20 years. So, yeah, and the advantage of starting with something like a text-based adventure is you can learn kind of how to do program flows and things, like how to get the computer doing what you want without having to learn all of the maths and things behind 3D modeling. So I support that advice from Graphic. Okay, so once we get a result back, I think this is how you do a normal promise. I just need to look up a piece of code just to confirm that I'm not doing something silly here. I probably need to be able to handle errors as well. Yeah, I think I know what I'm doing wrong here. Oh, that's not what I thought it was. Okay, so I've got the result. Second function being an error. I'm just going to cheat and not handle the error. It's not meant to be there. Yeah, currently working on my own. I've got a couple of friends that I kind of talk to a lot about it, and uh, I've yeah, I'll probably try and get help with a lot of the 3D modeling because I'm terrible at pretty much anything to do with artwork. I'm really quite weak on. The coding I'm fine, usually, most of the time. What have I done? I've lost my actual creation code. So I'm gonna have to just quickly find that. Where did my push code go? Here it is. Okay. There's my update. I've got that, that, that. What's its problem here? Am I missing another brace? No. Yes. Missing a brace. Okay. Not a huge fan of this. Mm, all right. I have a feeling this is going to work a bit better. Stop the client. Welcome back, Christopher. Good to see you again. I'm just continuing work on where I was on Friday, last Friday, Australian time. So not much has changed. I've just realized there's a huge restriction, a huge limitation in my protocol, which I'm currently working on fixing. All right. So I think that if I restart my service, is that running? No. What have I done? I broke. Oh, yes, I know exactly what this is going to be. I'm going to have compiler as anywhere that calls into this function because I need to send through a session ID. Oh, which we don't have. Hmm, that is frustrating. It makes sense. So because this is my entity service, I might need to make the session ID an optional parameter on here. Because the entity service, I mean, I can call that from the command line at the moment, and then there is no session ID. So, 2:32 a.m. I'm guessing, Tacos, that you are in Europe. Um, I wish I could stream at a better time for people in Europe. I have a few people that watch from Europe, and I know it's really bad timing. So Griffith, the way I'm doing it at the moment, and I'm not sure how successful it'll be in Mongo, I'm currently adding a client-controlled idempedence key to the client request. So the request from the client has an extra key parameter on it. The server that receives that request then will append that to a session ID and put that into a unique field within the database. Uh, yes, that's correct, Griffith, but I just use it for uniqueness. And that way, if we try to create two with the same combination of session ID and idempedence key, then it will fail. And that client will know, sorry, that service will know that it's already happened. Uh, so I do need to pass through a session ID in here. Okay, let's do in here rec dot. I'm going to do it as a header. I know this is dodgy, but let's just do it. No, I should pass it through as a proper request parameter. So ID const idempedence key and data. It's not the idempedence key, it's a session key. Hello, Ifman. I didn't see you come in. All right, so I have to do two things here. One is I have to handle this being undefined, because that is a totally legitimate case. So if session ID is not defined, just make sure, oops, that's meant to be session ID. Then when we do the create, I won't even treat that as an error. Now I've got another issue here, which is I have made this new idempedence key, which isn't even being sent through here, but my idempedence key is marked as being unique. I'm not sure how Mongo handles unique on undefined values. So let's quickly look that up. I do want it, if it's not defined, I want to be able to have multiple of them. Yes, so my plan is to make it a similar model to a lot of massively multiplayer online games. I plan to make it free for people to play, but to get beyond a certain point, you'll probably need to pay a subscription, but hopefully a small subscription. This looks like it's exactly what I want. In the EVE Online model, it's actually really quite fair. You can play quite a bit of the game without paying. It's the other nice thing. But certainly once you start getting much deeper into the game, you do really need to pay. But if you can't afford it, then it's a perfectly fun game anyway. Okay, where is my... Here it is. Index is true. I need sparse true. Now I can specify undefined. Yeah, well, with commercialization models, Griffith, you can't really know until you try it. Um, there's a common idea that you don't know how much someone will pay you for something until they actually pay you. You can send out all the surveys you want and ask people, would you pay for this? Would you pay for this? And people will say, yes, I'd pay for that. But until you actually have money in your hands, you have no idea if people are telling the truth. And so all you can do is try out business models to see what works. All right, so I send through the idempedence key here only if they have a session ID and an idempedence key. So uh, all right, so we've got our idempedence key. it might be null. Uh, equal to, if we have an idempedence key, then I'm going to do this. Otherwise, I think I can just do promise.resolved. I thought there was a promise.resolved. Is that what I want? Returns a promise that is resolved. Perfect. You got nice weather there, do you, Griffic? We've had nice weather up here in Sydney for the last kind of week or so after just months of torrential rain. But today's not looking too bad. I did just yesterday afternoon and today it's just been looking a little grayer. All right, so this is going to need to be a promise.resolve. Yeah, that's just going to be null in this case, which is fine. So in here, I can just do the lookup promise dot then. Okay, so what this is going to do is if we have an idempedence key specified by the client and a session ID to grab, then we will go and find, just to opportunistically hit this lock, we'll try and find anything with that item. Otherwise, I'll just resolve a promise to undefined, well, to null, I think it is in this case. Then over here, we have, once it gets that result, if it is not specified, so either this didn't find something or we came through this case, then we go and do the push into the component. This looks good. So next, I just need to make sure that that idempedence key is getting set. Oh, that the session ID, sorry, is being set when we call into this service. So that's easy enough to do. That happens in the UDP receiver. Why is my IntelliJ so slow today? Here we go. The datagram processor sends updates to here, message.entity updates. Let's just pass through the session ID, modify this to take a session ID. I think that'll work. Well, maybe. If I get my brackets right. What am I doing? To JSON. What does to JSON return? Is that a string or something? All right. Ah, I see what I'm doing wrong here. Here we go. It's so close. That's a string. I believe this is an object. Hmm. Ah, yeah, okay. I'm a little bit confused here. Um, I mean, this here should be. It is. It's an object. I can definitely see that this is an object. Oh, I should do a line count in my stuff. It's a little harder in the TypeScript side with all the node modules, but I should definitely do that at some point. Once I get sick of trying to fix whatever this bug is, I might even do that. Okay, what about this? Can I get that? Put that in there. I mean, do I really need this from JSON to JSON? What's update? Ah, there we go. That's got it. Right. I'm going to go and work out how many lines I've got in my stuff. Ah, what have I done? Um, I think I can do that. Dot exclude node modules. No, can't do an exclude. Ah, yeah. One of these days I will put music in the background. I can't be bothered getting uh trying to work out the licensing. So because I'm on YouTube, if I go and play anything from my normal music library, then I'll get copyright struck, which I don't want. Um, LS files, xargs. Oh yeah. Uh, I would obviously need to add in something there to find. Oh no, I probably don't have my node modules in my in Git. No, I don't. So yeah, I will use your command. Um, no, that's too many. There's no way I've written 68,000 lines of TypeScript. I must have some yarn modules in here. Okay, I'll stop going down that particular path. Oh, no, what I can do, hold on, I know I said I wasn't going to go down that path. I could just do find dot minus iname star dot ts. So that'll just find heaps and heaps and heaps of files. Grep minus v for anything containing node modules. That's 88 files. That sounds about right. Grep out the empty lines. That looks about right. There we go. 5,500 on the server side. It's funny the number of different ways you can do things like that. So, Griffic, you've gone for awk. Whereas I tend to just use my dodgy word counts and things like that. Okay. So 5,500 on the server. No idea how many I have on the client. I suspect it's more than that on the client, but a lot of it's dead code now. Let's see. Oh, hello, R&M guy. Sorry, I only just saw you come in. Yeah, so I'll actually, let's just go off on a little tangent here. I wouldn't mind just explaining what your command there does there, Griffic. So you've got in here, can I, no, I can't easily change my font size, that's okay. So git ls files, that's literally just asking Git to list all of the files that are under source control. Then xargs just runs a command across every one of these files. So you're just catting each of these file names. So this together outputs just the actual source code itself flattened into one file. Awk then runs something for any line containing a non-white space character. So this code won't run for empty lines or lines with just spaces on them. And this just says on each line, increase this X counter by 1. And then at the end of the thing, print out the whole number. All right. What have I done here? So I think this should now be working. Rerun this. Still not working. I've got, oh, I can see a compiler somewhere in here. What is it? No. Unfortunately, IntelliJ, when you start things in IntelliJ, it doesn't give you the errors if it fails to come up. So in here, I'm just going to do a docker compose stop and then up. And so hopefully we'll see the actual error message that's causing it to fail. Here we go. Here it is. Property idempedence key is missing in type component ID. Okay, update factory 74. Ah, yes, fair enough. Huh. Right. Now, I'm pretty sure an empty string will still get through my check for a non-existent idempedence key. Let's just double check. Um, yes, an empty string is considered false. So this will still do what I wanted. Yeah, when I used to be a Windows developer graphic, I always had Cygwin on my computer because those command lines can be so powerful. And Cygwin, Cygwin, I think it's spelt. It gives you Bash, it gives you Z shell, and so you can do a hell of a lot without having to do much once you understand those commands. All right, do I have a working server yet? I suspect not. I suspect I'll have similar problems all over the place. Ticker service index line 44. Ticker service index. Yep. Windows does come with a version of Bash now. It's a little bit funny though. It runs, it's actually Ubuntu under the covers. Well, it's an operating system from Canonical, the same company that does Ubuntu. Uh, and it runs in a strange virtual machine that has access to your file system. So it's quite a smart way of doing it. Whereas Cygwin requires binaries to be built for Cygwin and for Windows. The command line in Windows these days actually runs Linux executables. So they're actual ELF binaries, which is a much nicer way of doing it, I think. But there is some weirdness because it's not a native Windows app that you're running on the command line. Idempedence key is going to be undefined. Still doesn't like it. Oh, no, that's not the right spot. It is meant to be down here. Nope. I expected two arguments, got one. That is fair enough. All right, that's at least running now. So I'll just stop the server, start it up again. I seem to be largely past the days of having to delete my database every single time I start the server, which is good. Now I'm debugging UDP receiver. I can now hopefully run the client. God, I haven't watched any TV in quite a while. No spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it. What's this doing? It seems to have died, doesn't it? Have I hit a breakpoint? No. I'm going to kill Unity. Oh, what's happened? Oh, here we go. Start it up again. Go, it's at least running. Okay. So, I can find IntelliJ and then get this breakpoint in. Here we go. So here's a message coming in from the client. Make sure that you guys can see the gist of it. There we go. Yep, you can. I don't think you guys mind me hiding half the stack trace, but the variables we can see. So the message that's come in is an entity update, obviously for the player, but what I care about is the generic components. Unfortunately, there are no generic components on here. Oh, that's fair enough because I haven't actually sent through any commands yet. But if I go and pick up a stone, oh, we've got all sorts of failures happening here. Worry about them in a second, but I do have this generic component coming through. It has a component ID. Well, it shouldn't because this is a creation request. So I shouldn't have a component ID on here. That's going to cause all sorts of troubles. Do I add component? Do I dynamically add components to entities? Uh, Not sure quite what you mean, Griffith. The client in this case is adding is trying to add a component to the player entity, and this whole piece of work is trying to make it so that it will only, even though we're going to be sending through a lot of these updates, the server should only create one of them. Or if we had two commands pending, then it would send through two of them. Now, I know exactly why we're getting these errors here. This is going to be because I'm trying to specify the ID. So there's just a bug in the client, which is it should not be specifying a component ID. I even had a to-do on there to make sure it was globally unique. I knew this was going to be a problem. So now we do just send through a create. We send through our own idempedence key. Yeah, so these components, I haven't documented it anywhere, but these components will not be changed by the client. So SSB2, I don't actually need to copy this code and reuse it for every item. This is actually being done in a generic way that it will just work on any item that can be picked up. And it's black magic that you will come to know as you get a bit more experience with development. But there should be no copying and pasting of this particular piece of code. Now, let's just try this out. Make sure that it doesn't crash whenever I pick up, make sure the server doesn't crash every time I pick up a stone. Close that one. What's this doing? Something's dying as I bring the client down. That's okay. All right, if I come straight back in, we're going to have an extra player in because it takes a minute for that old player to disappear, but we'll just step around him. Oh, we've got no scatter at all. Something's very unhealthy here. And sure enough, I think one of my services just crashed. It's probably the entity service because I was sending through an ID that had too many bytes in it. And I think that's just completely crashed the entire service. I don't have much error handling in my services yet. Something that will obviously need to change before this goes live. Okay, wait for the server to come up. That looks up. Excellent. We've got trees and stones and things. If I pick up a stone and then get this breakpoint back in here, check the message, make sure it makes sense. We're still getting these crashes. Just eyeball what's coming in from the client here. We don't have an entity ID. Oh, this is wrong. This is a... What's type 2? Hold on. I54.roto. Why is my computer so slow? And then, yeah, this is sending through an update. Oh, that's on the entity. That's fine. We are updating the entity, but we are creating, hopefully. Yep, we are creating a new component, which is a remote command request, and it has an idempedence key. So, I need to work out why this is crashing. I think it's safe to bet that it is the entity service that's crashing. So I'll just prepare to debug it. We should see it crash really quickly after starting up. Here it goes. So I'll just stop it, see what its stack said all the way up the first time it crashed. Here it is. A cast error. It is the entity service. And sure enough, we can even see that we're getting a pickup command. We've got this from entity. Oh, this doesn't look right. Oh, that's the ID on the attributes. That's okay. That's not the real component ID. That's the command ID. So we can see that it is trying to pick up this item into the primary hand. It's trying to pick up one of them. On path components, can I have a stack trace? Do I get a stack trace? Oh, mongoose. It's complaining when I try to push it into mongoose. Oh, don't support keys that contain dots. It's a bit annoying. All right, I need to find out what characters I'm allowed in there, and I'm going to have to reserve something to handle this. All right, mongoose map key characters. Map. Keys must be strings. That's fine. Well, I'm just going to hope that it's only the dot character that's not allowed. I'll try a pipe character. Pipe seems like a perfectly fair thing to use as a separator. If I can find my code. I can't remember where I set that. Good luck, Griffith. So all I'm doing here is just changing. I'm apparently not allowed to use dots in these strings. So let's use a pipe symbol instead. Oh wow, SSB2. That's I hope you don't have anything too important on in the morning. What is it? Sunday night. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I hope you don't have anything on in a couple of hours' time. Sorry, I keep on calling you SSB2. I said I was going to call you tacos. Hopefully this comes back together soon. I'll probably be streaming about another half an hour today. Hopefully we get some good progress in that half hour. Am I not running the server? I'm not running the server. That would be an issue. Let's try running the client again. That looks better. Now, let's make sure the server is happy. It looks pretty happy. Then I'll pick up an item. It didn't crash. That's a good sign. But we are not coming into my breakpoint. Oh, that's because I'm not debugging that service. It's a bit annoying. Well, what I could do, I could go into the entity controller. So this is after it receives the command from the client, it calls into one of these endpoints here. In fact, it's going to call into this one. So let's just get a breakpoint there. We can step down. Idempedence key. is undefined. That's not what I want. Uh, all the models you can see at the moment, Tacos, are mine. However, for my mobs, I've got a chicken mob and a troll mob, and they're taken out of the Unity asset store. They will be replaced by something I do myself or something I get someone to do for me. So they'll be different to anything that's out there. Um, but yeah, those trees and stones are my work. It's about the extent of the 3D modeling I can do. And they took me forever. The tree took me forever. All right, so why is idempedence key not defined? Is because my session ID is not defined. We do have a client specified idempedence key. So, and the terrain, I should point out, the terrain is actually machine generated. So I wrote the code that generates this terrain, but it's all kind of random, the terrain. Okay, so I need to know why the session ID is not being set in here. So I've got a session ID. That is meant to be passed in as a parameter to update. That comes from here. Here we go. That's not meant to be session ID. Sorry, that's meant to be session ID. It's not meant to be session key. All right, stop the server. Start it up again. Not sure if the client will reconnect properly. All right, we have an idempedence key. Here it is. So we can see an idempedence key come in. It should then come into here, and I expect existing to not be defined because this will be the first time that it's actually executed this. Something's crashing. That's a bit of a worry. It's probably just something timing out, hopefully. So in this case, existing is null. Now if I run it again, existing should be defined. No, it's just never even coming in here. Here we go. And there we go, existing is defined. Beautiful. So this looks like it's only creating the command once. This is exactly what I want. I probably need to restart the server to get everything back in sync. That's all right. That was just me sitting on the breakpoint too long. That is not looking happy. Oh, where's that? I'm using the wrong method somewhere now. I'm just going to quickly track that one down. I've seen that come up a couple of times. Dot update. I must be calling an update method. I'm doing it in two places. Control Enter. So this should not be update. This should be update 1. And this should also be update 1. Neither here nor there, but I think it's update 1. Yes, because we're updating the entity. Yes. Okay, is this going to start? Yes, the server is started. The client can come in. I don't have any breakpoints set, but the point we're at now, this will be sending those command updates through. And the server will have a chance to see them. It won't be acting on them yet. So we can pick that up. We can drop it. And so now if I were to breakpoint in the receiver service, which I'll just quickly do just to confirm this is working properly. Receiver, stop everything, start it. Wait for everything to come up. We should have 2 command components being sent through on our player because we're not doing anything to clear them yet. Entity updates, generic components. No, we only have 1 still. That's interesting. Of course we only have 1 because I've not told it that drop is equivalent to this. But if I pick up something over here, then I should. Something isn't looking happy. It's my usual server crash from breakpointing too early. It's not an issue with my software. That is it's just something in my setup that I lose the connection to my node services. Ooh, favorite food. Oh, that's a tough one. I quite like some good Indian food. Sorry. Apparently, it's a chatty chat today. I've just been notified by Restream, the service I use to get the streams out to both Twitch and YouTube. Been notified by Restream that we've had 100 messages today. So another chatty day, which is I like. Yeah, pizza's good. I don't often have lasagna. I find it too much work to do myself. I missed Griffith's earlier comment talking to my friend about lines of code. Yeah, moved a few thousand lines. Uh, yeah, yeah. I think my favorite commit. Uh, I am not going to say anything about the company that it was with, but my favorite commit, I deleted 250,000 lines of code in one commit. It was an automated process that deleted them, but it was a lot of code that just didn't need to be there. Needless to say, my efficiency was very low that day, having deleted 250,000 lines of code. We're meant to be writing code as developers, right? Okay. I think I'm ready to implement the actual pickup because what I'm hoping to see. So let me just do the trial I want to do. So let's just move out of the way. We'll press play. Let's just demonstrate a valid test. So here we are. Here's our other player. There is a stone in front of us. I'm going to pick that stone up, come over here, leave the game, come back in, and then I'm expecting two players in the game. Once they appear, there they go. But this stone I want gone because this player just picked it up. So that is my test case. Of course, the stones will be in a different spot because they are... Oh no, the stones won't be in a different spot. They're persisted. Okay, so that is my goal for this stream, is to get that stone disappeared. Let's see. So I need to work out where I'm going to process this. There's another open question I have about where I store inventory. Now, I've said at various times that I want to store the inventory items as entities. I've decided against that. And the reason is, as the player moves around, the chunk that their inventory is in would be moving around as well. So as they move from one chunk to another, we'd need to be updating all of the entities that were in their inventory. So I am not going to store inventory items as entities for that reason. The other alternative is to store them as kind of attributes or components on the entity that owns them. And that is fine. That's a possibility. The only thing is I do want to have mechanics like if you harvest meat from a chicken, I want the meat to age. And the aging mechanic, perhaps that would be done by a ticker service. The problem is we don't have a good way of iterating over over attributes inside other entities. So I'm not a fan of that approach either. So I'm going to have a think about where I store them. I suspect they're actually going to sit off in some other database and probably owned by another service. That way I can enumerate items as if they're entities, but I don't need to have them coming back in entity queries. So that's something I can worry about later. For now, all I'm going to do is say that when you pick something up, it is going to destroy that instance. And when you put something down, let's just say it creates a new instance. So let's do that. We've got the payload. We send the updates into the client. In the ticker service, that's where I'll actually execute the commands. So we currently process AI agents, we process sounds. Let's process remote commands. Yeah, I've not been following Star Citizen. I have heard of it. Yeah, the moment you're spending that much on a game, if that amount's accurate, the moment you're spending that much on a game, the odds of getting a return on the investment are near zero. And I think that taking your figures there as correct, I think that whoever's investing in that needs to have a good hard look at themselves because I think they're probably putting good money after bad at that point. There's a sunk cost fallacy where people often think, well, I've already spent 300 million. What's another 10 million? And so they go and put 10 million in. when they should just be trying to get a return on the money that they have already put in, rather than putting in more money to try and improve that return. Okay, so I'm going to do something similar to this. But in here, what we're going to do is process remote commands. We're going to find anything with a remote command request. Receive that many remote command request entities on tick. Then that gives us each of the entities that need a remote command processed on them. Well, let's just try that out first. So I'm expecting a bunch of log messages. I'm actually going to get rid of some of these other ones because I know this stuff's working. I don't need the spam. So we expect after we pick up a stone, we expect to see a log message saying that we're processing a command. And it should just keep on saying that over and over and over again. Here we go, 0 commands. Play it. Pick up the stone. And now we're receiving one remote command entity. Excellent. So now I will actually okay. So entities dot each. Can we just do a for each? Let's do this so that we can do it proper async. Async. It always amazes me how much of a mess people can make of their Git repositories. It's usually recoverable though. It's unusual to be able to break something in such a way that you can't get it back. Okay. For each entity, I need to get the components. So get components from the entity, and these are going to be called remote command request. And I'm going to iterate them. Oh, I've never really used LFS before. But yeah, that would yeah, that'd be a pain to clean up. I assume you've got to get rid of that reference. Okay, so let's go remote command. Attributes. What did I call the command name? Oh, it's verb. Call it pickup. Okay, so log.info handling a pickup. Let's just make sure we're coming in here. I think that restarted that service. Pick up the stone. There we go, handling a pickup. So it knows that it's handling a pickup. So I'm not going to do any checking. Yeah, I'm intentionally just laying off the graphics for now, Tacos, just because I don't need it to... my goal is to test this first gameplay loop, which is harvesting resources with aggressive mobs running around near you. So anything that's not directly related to that in a multiplayer environment. Yes, Prince. Sorry, I'll finish answering my question before I move on. Anything not related to testing that specific gameplay loop, I'm just putting onto the back burner. And level of detail is the other thing. Because I have an infinite world, I'd need level of detail. I'd need to think about what range things are being rendered in, and so I'll just put that off until later. Yeah, printing is great. It's not so good in compiled languages like C# because you've got to stop everything and restart it. But if you've got TypeScript set up properly, just saving is enough. It'll restart the server for you, and you'll never know that it's not just running live. So in here, all I've got to do, I've just got to work out what the parameters are here. Where do I send it through? It's probably in the inventory pickup command. Inventory pickup performer. All right, we just set from.entity. So let's assume that from.entity has been set. Entity ID is going to be equal to remote command attributes from pipe entity ID. Was that entity ID? Yes. Let's just do another dodgy log message. Save that. That restarts that service. We bring it in. Rock is still there. Pick it up. And there we go. We can see the entity ID that we want to get rid of. And so let's just nuke it. How do I do that? Await entity client, delete by ID, entity ID. That would be nice. Okay. So I should be able to get rid of that. Now, if I come in here, I've got a feeling that stone will actually already be gone. It is. The stone is already gone. So let's now use this other one over here as my test case. I get rid of that. I come over here. I bring another player in. Oh, I'm not sure why. Thank you for the feedback, um, Helleratan. Just one moment. Can't even find the setting. Testing, testing. Yeah, I can see that. I'm going to have to off stream have a bit of a play with that. I hadn't really noticed, but you're right. The left speaker is slightly stronger. Let me just. See what I can do here. Advanced audio properties. Testing, testing. How's that? Is that a bit better? I should be able to set the mic to mono. I can't see where to do it immediately, but I think that looks a bit better now. Uh, I have the mic in cardioid mode, I think, which I thought would have been kind of doing that anyway. Would have been setting it to mono. I could be wrong. Okay. So sure enough, that rock is now gone. So I can now remove rocks. This is really good. Remove the one off to the left. Bring that player out. Bring another one in. Really want to be sure. It feels weird now, does it, Griffic? Excellent. So players can now see stones disappearing from the world when other players remove them. Excellent. So the next thing I want to do, given I do plan to stream for another 10 minutes, so might as well make a bit of progress in there. The next thing is obviously when you're putting stuff down. So uh, if somebody picks up this stone here and then drops it into the center there, sometimes my buttons don't work, but drops it into the center, then I want other players to be able to see it in the center. Now, obviously, if I bring this player out, bring another one in, checkbox for mono for all devices. Oh, I see it. Testing. Yeah, that looks. Oh no, that's still not any different. Is it? Yes, that looks better. That is now mono. Strangely, the little level indicators aren't always exactly equal, but the limit meters. Yeah, thanks for the tips there. So, yep, the stone is not in the middle, obviously. Now, I can't use the same trick. Uh, if I use the same trick, sorry, I just realized that there was another setting that was probably going to mess things up. Thank you very much. Uh, uh, um, there seem to be a lot of Australian game developer YouTubers. I don't know what it is. Uh, so I'm surprised that you're not used to the Australian accent doing game development. Okay, so I can't use the same trick. So at the moment, all it's doing is when it sees a pickup command come through, it's just deleting that entity from the world. So as I said, I can't do that because we can't just say, let's just go put some code in here just to demonstrate. Else if that, in here, it's going to be a from.slot, right, is what we're going to be getting back when a drop happens. Lots of New Zealanders too, are there? can only think of one New Zealand game developer off the top of my head. Okay. So I can't do the same trick because I can't go and create. So we do have this create entity, but I need the details of the entity. So what I need to do instead is fix up our pickup code to record the details of the entity as we pick it up and store it somewhere. Now, as I said, I don't know where I want to store inventory slots. I don't want to store them as top-level entities because the coordinate system is really baked into my entity service. And I don't want to store them as components on the player because that'll make it too difficult to implement mechanics I want later, like the aging and expiry of inventory items. So instead, what I might do is I might store them as a separate top-level entity type. Or alternatively, sorry, thinking out loud here, my other option would be, if I can find my definitions, so here's my current schema. It currently has, well, name I don't really use anymore. Transform needs to change at some point. Location is used extensively for indexing. But what if I made location kind of optional and added in the concept of a parent? Commands? No. I want to be able to do things like have meat go off in someone's inventory is the thing that I'm trying to do. And I want to be able to store inventory items in a way that I can quickly look up on the server what is in someone's hand, yet also be able to enumerate the inventory items that are able to be processed for going off. So I think that the best way to do that is going to be to make this owner being a cell or an entity. Yeah, fair enough. So what I'm going to be doing here, location basically specifies the main thing it's used for is specifying a chunk that the entity is located within, and that is an indexed property that it might not actually be indexed yet, but the idea is that that will be indexed so that we can do things like find all of the entities within these chunks. That's all fine. But if I also have, well, let's say owner, and make this an entity ID. So this is, but is soft grid style. Yeah, so I want to avoid, as the player moves, I don't want to have to update all of their inventory. So what I'll do is I'll make it so that when you do and find all of the items, well, all of the entities in a chunk, you will not get back any of the inventory. And if you do ask for, well, once you have a player, there'll probably be a component on them to say, here, by the way, this entity does have inventory. So if you want to know about that, go and query for it. But you'll be able to do an actual ID, object ID. You'll be able to ask for the owning entity. That will additionally then need, I'm not sure Tacos actually said that, oh, okay, Tacos is leaving. I was wondering if Tacos was just going to celebrate the fact it was 4 a.m. Thank you so much for joining, Tacos. I realize it's really late there. Appreciate you having you come along. Hope you join again. And subscribe if you want to have notifications about the fortnightly episodes, my devlog episodes. So as well as an owning entity, we also need a slot. I mean, these could go and sit inside some sort of a compound object, but this will do for now. slot, which I'm just going to make a string for now, because I don't know really what I want it to be. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Tacos. Now, I assume I can't actually specify this in the Mongoose schema, but I am going to document it here that entities must specify either a location or both an owning entity and a slot. Yeah, interesting there, Graphic. Yeah, my location, unfortunately, is a, a rich type. Oh, I've even got it to do here. So I do intend to get rid of transform at some point. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I'll keep on going down this path for now. It's going to lead to some conditional code. Well, I'm going to end up with conditional code regardless, because it needs to know how to interpret each of the entities. But this feels pretty straightforward. All I've got to do in here, I need to fetch the entity, const ent, from entity is going to be the entity client dot fetch by ID, entity ID. Then I can just modify this entity from entity dot location is going to become undefined. Wrong with that? Oh, that needs an await. So we remove its location. That effectively takes it out of the world. We set its what do I need in here? I need the parent owning, what did I call it? Owning entity. Let's call it parent entity. That way, if I need to, then I can, oh, what's this doing? Let's just stop the server. If I need to, then I can, totally lost my place. Yeah, we make that parent entity so that if I need to, I can have things like backpacks be owned by the player, and then items within the backpack be owned by the backpack, and parent makes more sense then. I'm effectively specifying a tree here. And I'll likely put a component on any entities that are expected to contain anything. So backpacks will have some sort of a container component, as will players. I think that makes sense. Okay, so I've got that parent entity is going to be UUID what is the player? No, it's just the entity's ID, not that entity ID. Entity dot ID. The problem is that's probably a string. It is. Well, so is this. Is it? Here we go. So, is that right? Yep, entity, that's a string. Slot is a string. Then sorry, having troubles finding my actual code. Here it is. D from entity.slot is going to be equal to the remote command dot attributes to slot. Then rather than deleting it, I need to somehow tell it to send an update on the entity service. The problem is I can't do it using the usual update mechanism. And the reason for that is if I send an update requesting that the location be undefined, that will be interpreted as please don't change the location. So I'm tempted to put a new endpoint on the entity service that actually does this for me. So to make that a bit clearer, entity route, let's make sure I've got a checkpoint, a bookmark there. Get back to that easily. So what if in here, I put an yeah, Griffith, mine's not quite that simple because my update method is actually built on top of the Protoc protocol. So I don't believe I can actually send null. ID / now I want to post a new, I don't know what I'm going to call this. Let's call it a parent. So we can set the parent to either be a location or, yeah, either a location. Yeah, it is a bit awkward. It's not ideal. And it's really a hack, so I don't have to define all the types twice. But this, I think, will come out looking quite nice. So if I set parent, which will let me... Am I planning to use an aggregation request to do indexed lookups for slotted items? Yes. That will probably be another subtype of query. Where you'll be able to specify a rich structure that says, you know, find things that are in this slot of this entity ID. Set parent. In fact, I'm going to do two of these. I'm going to do a separate one for location, and these will both just manage either side of the connection. Set location, set parent. The client should generally have a, I believe in general, the client will be automatically in sync because they will always, I think this is true, Not quite true. It's close to true that the client will always be the one initiating something moving from one inventory slot to another, and it will always be able to work out whether or not that was successful or not. So they should be automatically kept in sync. The one exception to that will be, I guess, with a trading system or, yeah, even just the concept of merchants, NPC traders. In that case, the system itself will be trying to put stuff into catch around R&M go. The server itself will be pushing through changes into the inventory, in which case there just needs to be some mechanism for it to communicate that. So I don't think that the client will ever query at at login time, it needs to know what's in its inventory. But yes, at that point, it'll be a query on itself, and it will just not specify the slot. So it'll say, give me all of the inventory for my player ID, and it should get its entire inventory back. And then for synchronization, it just needs to use timestamps and sequence numbers to work out whether or not things have been updated correctly. Okay. So I've got set parent, set location. These are both pretty easy. Right, two functions at once. Set parent. Yes, I'm still sending everything to everyone as well at the moment, but I do have a bunch of code that I've written just waiting to get turned on. Finished and then turned on. That will make sure that people only see stuff relevant to them. So it'll only send through updates within your local area. And that code would not see inventory changes because that's all based on chunk. Yes. Yeah, I'm just using a radius approach at the moment, Griffic, where things within a two chunk radius all get sent through to players within that two chunk radius. There will need to be some concept of being inside a structure so that if things are happening inside a structure, you don't necessarily see that. Yeah, incremental updates. Mine holds a copy. I'll just actually show off the code. I can find the code. It is in the transmitter service. Mine doesn't do incremental updates. It actually holds a copy of, where is it? A copy of all of the state. So this is the state that the server believes the client holds, and it actually holds a server-side copy of what it thinks the client can see. And then on each tick, or each time it sends a UDP packet, it rebuilds a state of what it thinks the client should be able to see now, and then it will generate a diff for those and send that through to the client. This client state only gets updated when an ACK comes back from the client, and this will then go and apply whatever delta that acknowledged packet said back onto this state. So it's not quite an incremental diff. It is always a complete diff since the last acknowledged packet from the client. Now, with my invalidation approach that I implemented a few days ago, that gets a little bit more complicated because sometimes it will not send through a diff for certain changes. Like, for example, the trees and stones are not being sent through as diffs at the moment. They're being sent through as invalidation requests. So there's a whole bunch of additional state up here where it needs to record the fact that it has sent an invalidation. And when the client then says, yes, I have now executed this invalidation, it can then update the state. There's a whole bunch of logic in here for making sure that the updates get applied in the correct order, and I'm pretty sure it's correct. That's correct, Griffith. Although I'd argue it doesn't necessarily matter that as with the updates being set between the client and the server, it doesn't matter if things are atomic because you might get duplication happening, but it'll be temporary duplication. So if something does end up in the backpack before it ends up in the world, on the client side, it's fine because it'll disappear from the world on the next tick. And if they manage to interact with it in the meantime, then the server will reject that because it will know that the item isn't there. So I'm not too concerned about things being atomic between the client and the server. But it's nice for things like that to be atomic. It obviously leads to less, jitter. Jitter's not quite the right word. All right, set parent. I need to define my body type. So the parent is straightforward. We're just going to have the parent entity ID and the slot. Entities controller dot. I'm just going to send these straight through. Yeah, I need to make sure that I've got my idempedence correct in there. Yeah, I think that mine should always keep the same ID. And this is a benefit of actually putting stuff into the entities schema, is when something's being moved from the real world out to the client, there's no reason why we're keeping the same ID. The reason they might not go through in the same frame, or the same tick, sorry, in my world is something like an inventory update might be considered high priority, whereas removing the item from the world might be considered low priority for some reason. And so part of the update might not actually make it into the packet. All right, so set parent, we're going to set it to the parent entity ID and the slot. And then res.status, status codes. I'm just going to use accepted. All right, similar thing here, except in here, I need to pass out a bit more stuff. I need to pass through a chunk, a hex, and I'll pass a Y. That one's going to be a number. This one is going to be a U and a V. That doesn't like that. You will need some, at a guess, if you're using UDP, you do need some logic to limit, well, to either limit the size of the UDP packets you're sending out, or to have a way of joining multiple UDP packets together. Otherwise, the issue with UDP is the moment you go over whatever the MTU is, it's usually 1500 bytes, but it can be as small as 500 bytes, you will silently start dropping those packets, which can be obviously not good. And I'm trying to put off as long as I can. I'm trying to put off anything that joins UDP packets together. I just want to send a single UDP packet per tick is my goal. Oh, using WebSockets. Yeah, no, that totally, yeah, totally different constraints then. All right, so let's grab that out. And then we're going to set location. This is going to take the chunk, X, and the Y. I need to implement that one. And I need to implement that one. X is going to be an axial coordinate. And Y is going to be a number. Going well, thanks, Christopher. We have items being removed from the world globally when somebody picks them up. I'm now making it so that it's able to store inventory for people. And then I will work on having the items dropped back into the world. Okay, this isn't quite going to work because this needs a converter. New chunk coordinate, chunk.u, chunk.v, new axial coordinate, x.q, x.r, and we pass through a y. Doesn't like that because it was just slow to update. Yeah, sorry, I stopped halfway through my explanation. But this should get us to a point where, yeah, we can pick stuff up, drop things, and actually see it across multiple clients. I don't know an easy way of running multiple copies of the game on my machine. When I've done it on my devlog series, I've actually just had I've got an old laptop that I don't use anymore that I spun up and connected. But it'd probably be pretty good if I could have multiple copies of my game running so that I could show. Maybe I can run one as a built binary and then the other one within the editor. That could work. But it would be good to show one item being picked up, another one being put down, and be able to see that in another instance of the game. I'll almost certainly have to have that for my devlog episode next weekend. Otherwise, it's a pretty boring demo that looks like it's been faked, even though you guys can see it's real. In an episode, just showing it being picked up and put down, and then, hey, look, it's still there, doesn't look as impressive. All right, set location. Let's just get this guy down to the bottom as well. When setting the parent, we need to go and do an update of one item. Run networked clients. I'm not sure. Oh, that lets you run multiple instances of the game, does it? Huh. I'll definitely look into that. But yeah, I mean, worst case, I can just worst case, I can just do a build of the game and run one of the copies like that. What have I done here? Export. Const. Set parent. Wow, I really messed this up. It's going to be equal to async. I'm pretty sure I could have asked IntelliJ to do this for me. See that if I do that. Another change I want to make. I really don't like having this at the top of all these methods, and the common server infrastructure I've written is perfectly capable of doing something like this as an initialization step and putting the whole server inside a handler for that promise. I'll probably just Google how to run multiple instances of the game. I can't be the first person to let you run 2 instances though. It's very good to know. Underscore ID is going to be MongoDB. MongoID. What's the MongoID? Ah, yes, I do need to know the entity ID. Sorry to blind everyone there. Entity ID. Entity ID. Oh, sorry everyone. Just going to do that one more time and close that window. I don't know. I must have pressed a shortcut on my keyboard to get that up. Okay, I need to pass through an entity ID. Dot ID. Then I need to tell it which one I'm actually going to do. Sorry, I need to send the actual update through. And this is fairly simple. We just need to specify the location. Is just going to be undefined. And the... Oh, there's a loud motorbike just went past. I live on a very major road, unfortunately. Action is undefined and parent entity, I think I called it. Parent entity, which is from hex parent ID dot to not to proto to Mongo. And then slot. I don't know why I'm putting quotes around these things. It's technically more correct. The slot is just going to be the slot. Is that really all there is to it? That should clear out the location. Should do those things. And then I'm going to do something similar here. Entity ID. Let's do that. Except this time, oh, you couldn't hear the motorbike. Fair enough. I'm going to be so surprised if this is right. Ooh, what have I done here? Right. Fish I do when I'm off stream, and I have considered trying to work out how to have music playing in my ears. I know it can be done. Having music playing in my ears without it coming over the stream, because I don't want to get my streams claimed. but I've never gotten around to it. But yeah, normally I have music playing when I'm not on stream. And it's all sorts of stuff I listen to. I've got a weird, fairly broad taste in music. I've never heard the term chill pop before. I'll have to look that up. All right. So I've got parent, I've got location. These are posts. Oh, these should be puts, shouldn't they? I like to get my verbs right in REST interfaces. Yeah, my concern is that if I turn off desktop and have the music playing, I'll still have the issue that every now and then you guys will have to put up with me singing along to music, which you really, really, really don't want. I'll try it one of these days. I am slightly concerned that I won't be able to. Uh, it's hard enough trying to code and talk at the same time. I have a feeling that music would make that even worse. In fact, I think I do have my desktop sound turned off. Okay, so over in here, I can now await an entity client dot. Oh, not quite there. Yeah, I could try listening to some instrumental stuff. There's not much instrumental stuff I listen to. Set is pickup, so this is going to be setting parent for the entity. Get rid of most of this stuff. It's not meant to be entity. Oh, this was wrong, wasn't it? Was it? No, it was right. We've got the remote command ID dot attributes from entity ID. Yeah, I've heard a few people mention a similar problem to that graphic, and I think it's also some people fine. I know my wife is able to listen to music, not understand the lyrics, and that's fine. But if I can't hear the lyrics, I do find myself similarly concentrating very hard because I have to be able to hear the lyrics. I don't know what it is, and it can, yeah, it almost triggers me if there are words being sung and I don't know what they are. Entity ID, no, entity dot ID, yep. This is just getting messy. Let's do keep that as entity ID. Let's not grab those anymore. But I need a slot. Const parent ID is going to be equal to entity.id. Const slot is going to be that. And now I should just be able to go parent ID and slot. Slot. There we go. Decided this was going to be a put. That sounds really interesting, Christopher. It is interesting how different languages and different cultures do kind of bring their own interpretation to lots of different styles. Jason, I need the parent entity ID. I think I ended up calling it. And the slot is going to get passed directly through. Missing. Missing a curly bracket. There we go. Yeah, I might as well do the same thing here. Just to check the result. We need to make sure that comes back as an accepted. And lastly, I need a set location. Entity ID. That sounds like a pain graphic. Chunk coordinate. I should just be passing through the coordinate in here. So that coordinate in here. And then go chunk is uv.v. For anyone who's new here, you don't need to worry about all these u's, v's, q's, and r's. This is just the coordinate system that my game uses. Feel free to go back and check my hexagons are the bestagons episode and making an infinite terrain, I think it was, or making my world infinite was the name of the episode. I think they're episodes 12 and 13. They will give you a bit of an overview over what my coordinate system actually is. Yes, I've got, depending on how you look at it, I've got either 5 or 7 components to my coordinate system. Okay. So that, I think, is all I need. Just double check that that seems consistent. Set location takes a chunk, a hex, and a Y. A chunk, a hex, and a Y. That looks pretty good. That works. Haven't implemented this yet, but I think I've gone way over the half hour or whatever I said I was going to stream for, but I really want to see this working now. So I'm no longer calling delete, but my hope is that this will have the same effect, even though I'm not deleting the entity anymore. Just going to pull that out, put a new player in. This will reset the day cycle. It's kind of funny. The day cycle still being controlled by the client. Probably need to fix that. Oh, come on. I have no idea if this lockup that seems to happen every now and then is Unity's fault or Ryder's fault. One or the other, but Ryder seems to be pretty good at fixing it when I tell it to restart Unity. Okay. Few little graphics glitches there. Of course, we've got no terrain scatter near the origin now because they've all been picked up. So in front of the player, if we pick that up, log the player out, bring another player in, there should not be a little black round stone close to the other player. There's the other player. It looks like it is still there. Yeah, I've not had any problems with TypeScript, unless it's somehow locking up the whole machine, but that would be pretty unusual on Linux. Okay, so this isn't being deleted. Why not? Why did it not receive the command? Hold on a second. I'm going to do the unthinkable. I'm actually going to blow away the database. So that everything is in a known state. Bring this back up so it'll regenerate some terrain scatter near us. Other side effect of this. I'm going to put a breakpoint on here. Okay, hopefully it doesn't slow it down too much. Oops. Oh, right. I don't know what that was. Obviously, some sort of a race condition somewhere. But it did eventually generate the terrain. Okay, so if I pick up this stone that's in the middle of this sand, oh, it doesn't hit that breakpoint because I'm not debugging that service. Let's quickly get the ticker service open in the debugger. Hopefully we'll hit that breakpoint almost immediately. Let the server start. There we go. I mean, it looks like it's kind of working. I mean, I expect it to be over and over again, falling out. Oh, I reckon I know what the problem is here. I reckon Mongo is not deleting the location just here. Sorry, I just need any old line in there just so I can get a breakpoint on here. Debug the entity service. Okay. My yes. Updated entity has indeed a location. Let me guess, this is meant to be null. Pretty much what Graphic was getting at before. The way that Graphic does it in their server, in their protocol. All right. And now if I break here, location is still null. Excellent. Keep going. So this player has removed the round stone from the center of the sand. So now if I bring another player in, is it still gone? It is still gone. Nice. So next, I need, well, all of my set parent stuff is probably, sorry, all of my set location stuff is probably all wrong. For starters, they're meant to be nulls, but it's worse than that because I don't know the entity ID at this point in time. So now I do want to do this part atomically. So rather than using the entity ID, I actually want to look this up by an entities slot. So let's go parent entity ID slot. Then I have to look up I need to look up the entity for that information. Okay, I need to find parent entity, its parent entity ID. Slot. That needs to be an await. Don't need to convert that, obviously. Okay. Obviously, this now needs to totally change. This is going to be ID slash slots slash colon slot slash location. So this is the parent ID. Look into its slots, grab its slot, and set the location with a put. Set location is that, comma, rec.params.slot. All right. Entity client will need to change. This was always wrong. Parent ID, comma, slot. Slash slots slash slot. Is this a put? Yes, it's a put. Okay. This is really just the entity that we're processing at the moment. We grab the slot. I need to look at what I'm actually setting in here on the client. Oh, I'm not doing it yet, am I? All right, time to copy and paste this code. So when we try to perform that operation on the client, I'm not going to consider this case. I believe this is for transferring inventory between different slots. I'll implement it here anyway. So this won't work if you drag between slots, but that's okay. Parameters dot. I need to know who the player is. What's this constructor? This is some automatic constructor, is it? Oh no, sorry, this is get parameters. Don't mind me. Yeah. Cancel. Oops, go away. This needs a object player. Uh, I have no idea what I'm doing wrong here. Cannot resolve. Oh, I see. it got partway through making a change for me before when I closed that other window. Okay. I've got to make sure I'm passing the actual player in to each call that pulls apart those parameters. And then in here, we go and put a command request on the player for drop. Welcome back, Griffith. Oh, right. So just to recap what I'm doing here, I'm just implementing the drop on the client side. Now to do that, let me think about what these are. The from, in this case, is going to be a slot. Which is going to be target. Check out what our parameters have in them. Parameters.slot. Dot to string. Now our to is going to be a target, is a vector. Parameters dot position. Why doesn't it like that? Because types that. Oh, I think that's my own type. And welcome back, Aaron M. Guy, too. Everyone's popping in and out at the moment. I really don't know what this type is. Vector 3 doesn't match expected type, cannot convert. Source type, Unity engine. Systems.server.vector3. Systems.server. What? Oh no, I've got a default namespace.server up there. So why can't I? Oh, because I've got. Yeah, right. I think I'm going to have to be explicit about every single one of these. I should really sort something out with my types here because this is just going to cause all sorts of problems. That. Three, that's meant to be a Unity engine. Fixes that one. Okay. This is all fine. This is painful. Do I need to say default namespace? All right. Still not quite there. New one of those. Okay. Yeah, not sure. The problem is there aren't any real frameworks you can take off the shelf for MMOs. What I could have done, and probably would have been smart, is to just aim to not support lots and lots and lots of players right from the get-go. But it would have meant that I would have had to have re-implemented this stuff later anyway, but it would have let me test things earlier. So yes, I probably should have done things using a framework that didn't support MMOs, but did support multiplayer. Would have saved myself a lot of time. Because if it turns out that the gameplay just completely sucks, then I've wasted this effort potentially. That said, I also have it in the back of my mind that with a lot of refactoring and redesign, this could make a general purpose MMO engine. I mean, yeah, my hex system baked into this at the moment. But if I could find a way of making that more generic, then potentially, you can imagine a world where someone can just download a library from the asset store or whatever engine they want that gives them all the comms and stuff out to an MMO service that runs in the cloud for them. So that could be kind of cool. Yeah, so I'll definitely announce it when I'm doing the testing. There'll be pre-beta testing fairly soon, so I'll have a really flaky version of the server sitting up in the cloud, and I'll definitely be inviting people in to take a look at that, just to see if the general gameplay is fun, even though the server will be falling over left, right, and center. But I would definitely love to test the gameplay, and I'll be getting people in from outside to do that for sure. Okay. What am I trying to do here? I've got my slot. I've got my target. I need a quantity. I'm just not going to set the quantity yet. I don't think I'm even using it in my other command. And then the last thing I need to do is, well, that's it. That's put the command on that item. I think I can just get rid of all of that. Is that all I need? The verb, got the verb, the from and the to. I'm not setting the quantity. And player, which is the performer. Okay, well, that looks like it'll compile now. I'm pretty happy with the growth of the channel. It did stagnate a bit when I started doing these live streams, and that's to be expected. I know that I lost some subscribers because I'm just spamming people's subscription notifications when I'm doing a daily stream. But that seems to have slowed down now, and last episode got a lot more views than the one before, so I'm pretty happy with the growth. Okay. And yeah, development. I mean, development logs just aren't everyone's cup of tea, is the other thing. So there are some people who like watching games being developed and others that like watching games being played. So if you're not interested in the technical stuff, then I can understand my stuff not being terribly interesting. And the other thing I don't do in my devlogs is kind of really explain the nuts and bolts of, if you look at someone like Game Maker Toolkit or Stephen Larg, someone like that, then you kind of really get to see how to do something, whereas I'm not showing so much the line by line in the development log series. Okay. Now, there is a problem here, which is if I go and test this now, the server is, because no commands are being cleaned up, the server's actually going to be executing the pickup command over and over and over again, and the drop command over and over and over again. If it does them in order, then we get the right reaction. Let's try it. I'll just try it. Got this. This needs to do a... We've got the parent ID, we've got the slot, we've got the target. Is that what it's called? Target is correct. Entity client dot set location. We get the parent ID, we give it the slot, and we give it the coordinate, which is just target. Okay. So I pick that up, we drop it over here, and there should now be two commands on my player object. So let's just check the player object. And sure enough, we have two commands. We have a pickup and a drop. Now, ideally, there'd only be one because we would have seen the server execute the pickup and remove it. But what's actually happening is this thing is falling over. Why is it falling over? Because something's just generally crashed. Try and catch the actual error. It was whatever that error was. Is. Ooh, that doesn't look right. Oh, right. Welcome back, Griffic. Currently trying out my drop code. I don't expect it to work because I'm not deleting. Oh, what was that? I'm not deleting any commands. So it's going to be constantly just doing pickup. If someone picks something up and then drops it, it's just going to be constantly doing pickup, drop, pickup, drop. So something else is wrong in here though. Did I restart the client? I didn't restart the client, did I? And the client is currently repeatedly crashing the server. So yeah, until I've implemented the proper acknowledgements, I'm not expecting this to work. Or if it does, it'll work by chance because it happens to execute the commands in the right order. Oh, I guess it will execute them in the order it receives them. Ooh, this might actually work then. Stop, because I don't have a server running. Up and running, run the new client. Is that? Bad request. I don't know what that was. That's something to do with my session manager, so I'm just going to ignore that. That was probably just the order something was coming up. Then I'll pick up that stone. I'll drop that stone. We should be executing 2 commands. No. Oh, well, we might be executing 2 commands. We've only got 1 entity with commands on it. Are we executing this command here? Oh, I'm up over 3 hours now. This is my longest stream yet, I'm pretty sure. Definitely have to finish up soon because I'm suddenly very hungry. And I have actual work I need to do this week as well. So I may not stream every day this week because I do have a project, a paid project starting up, which is going to take up some of my time. That is clearly not going to work. Ah, this is obviously not right. The problem here is that this target is a vector. The client is just sending through the coordinates of the point that the person pointed at. So if I change this to target point, then target is going to be a coordinate from vector, target point. Yeah, what's the bet? Target point has it's in capitals instead of, don't do that. I bet you the target point is in capitals. Well, kind of contract work. I have a business as well um, that does consulting work. Can't go into too much detail about it because the clients don't like the work being known. It's just development stuff, cloud development. Um, Very different stack to this one too. What my business does. Still not working. Obviously, I haven't changed any code. Is this all caps? Target is undefined. All right. So here we've got a drop. It has a slot. but apparently we don't have a to target. So why wouldn't we have a to target? Ah, I know why. Because I'm not sending that through over here. Am I not sending it through? Oh, I am. But I need this. Okay, stop this. That is going to be equal to a new vector 3. Need to construct these myself. X. These are going to need to be parsed. Parse float. That. Z and Y. Oh, right. That's going to work for me. If I don't lose the connection to my node process, try again. I am guessing that my session died, so let's just run another session. Doesn't look right. What's going on here? Okay, server's coming up. All looking healthy. Oh, here we go. So this must be a problem in entity controller. I'm a little bit surprised that it's running this code. Or have I somehow managed to put junk in the database? Where's my stack? Model.query. That's not the stack I want. I want my stack. Yeah, delete the database. Yeah, I think you're right. Yep. It does look like it's just managed to get a string inside the database. That's a little bit of a worry. Down, back up. I think it's a second. Well, it could be either. If I'm putting the database deletion into my list of things to do, then it's spelt with a Q, I guess. But if you're preempting it, then it's a C. I think you meant the preempting it. That's not meant to be running. Let's try running this one first. Nope. This one. Normal first time it generates. Ah, we're under a tree. There we go. I obviously need to fix those race conditions. Okay, I'm going to get... Well, I'll put this over on one side of the screen. I'll get this one over the other just so that I can see my log messages. And then let's pick that up and then drop it. All right, that didn't work. Why not? I reckon whatever put that string in the database, because I haven't fixed it, is probably still a problem. String parent entity. Yeah, I mean, this kind of makes sense. When I do this, no, that's allowed. Am I still getting that same error? I want to know whether or not it's the set parent or the set location that's breaking it. I wonder if it's when I null this out that it's becoming an issue. Because this is definitely a proper Mongo ID. I should change that to string. Change that to string. I don't want to have to blow away the database every time. I'll just stop the services, bring them back up. So I appear to somehow be pushing a string. Aha. I'll be able to look up that genre now. Parent entity. So how can I possibly be pushing in a parent entity? Is definitely doing what I want it to do. All right, I'm just going to have to blow the database away until each time I restart the service until I've got this tracked down. So I believe this to be a bug in the entity controller. It has to be this line that's breaking. I mean, I'm not setting the parent entity anywhere else but here. Is there any way I could be setting it through an update request? I don't think there is. All right. Well, I'm not going to set these breakpoints yet. I just need to work out where it's breaking. So is it breaking on this line, on when we set the parent, or is it breaking when we set the location? So the question can be rephrased as, does it crash when I pick up a rock, or does it crash when I drop a rock? One. We back up onto the terrain, please. Okay. So we pick up a rock. That does not cause an issue. Well, that's interesting. I could have breakpointed it. I'm going to breakpoint this one now. So it is my suspicion that object IDs aren't nullable for some reason. That doesn't sound right. Oh, not Mongo ID. That needs to be entity.id. Oh, wait, is that? Ah, is that the issue? This, okay, what type is this? All right, breakpoint. No, it's already crashed. It's already died. Oh, is that just that compile error? All right, let's just bring this up. I think this will run fine without that problem. I'm pretty sure it's the dropping of the stone that's causing the issues. Come in through here. I'm wondering if entity.id is broken. Doesn't quite make sense. Oh, what's this? Ah. Found it. Have I? Yes. This needs to be UUID from hex to Mongo. I'm very confused about the fact that this was... Ah. So my confusion was that I was wondering why it was still executing this code when the client was disconnected. But of course it is, because this is executing it due to commands that are stored in the database. So yeah, my issue is that I'm not passing in Mongo IDs here, so I need to convert them. And this should now magically work. I'm not even going to set breakpoints. I'm confident enough that this is going to fix it. So I'm going to drop that over there. I'm just going to run this player away, bring another one in. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, we've got 3 of the darker stones in here. If I pick one up and put it up over here, and then stand here, then leave the game, and then come back in, it doesn't quite work. Okay. So I need to debug the code that's placing it again. Now, at this point, I am going to have to finish up the stream because I am losing concentration like nothing else and need to get some food. So I do want to thank everyone for joining me. I will be streaming again same time tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe for devlog episodes. So until tomorrow, I'll catch you around. Or whenever you happen to tune in.